Commander Sarah Chen stared at the holographic display showing the Galactic Council's latest decree. Her jaw tightened as she read the familiar words that had become humanity's chains for the past 50 years. Restricted species classification remains in effect. Humans are prohibited from establishing colonies beyond the Sol system. Military fleet expansion is forbidden. Technology sharing with humanity is suspended indefinitely. The bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship Defiance fell silent. Around her, the crew of humans and their few alien allies watched their commander's reaction. Sarah had lived through 30 years of this humiliation, watching her species treated like dangerous children who couldn't be trusted with the galaxy's toys. The Council had always been afraid of humanity. Not because humans were the strongest or the smartest, but because they refused to accept the established order. Every other species in the galaxy had found their place in the Council's carefully maintained hierarchy. The Zephyrians provided technology, the Corvin handled trade routes, the massive Threnodi served as enforcers, and the ancient Veil acted as mediators and decision-makers. But humans? Humans questioned everything. They innovated where others followed tradition. They formed alliances across species lines instead of staying within their designated roles. Most terrifying of all to the Council, humans inspired other species to dream of something better. Sarah remembered her first diplomatic mission 20 years ago as a young lieutenant. She had watched Ambassador Williams bow his head respectfully as the Veil Chancellor explained why humanity needed to remain confined to their home system for the stability of galactic civilization. The ambassador had accepted every restriction, every limitation, every insult with practiced diplomacy. Those days were over. Admiral Rodriguez is requesting immediate communication from Luna Base, announced Communications Officer Martinez, his voice cutting through Sarah's thoughts. Put him through, Sarah ordered. The weathered face of Admiral Carlos Rodriguez appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Sarah could see the bustling activity of the Lunar Command Center. Sarah, I assume you've seen the Council's latest gift to humanity? Every insulting word of it, she replied. How are the other fleet commanders responding? Captain Zhang from the Mars Defense Fleet wants to know when we stop talking and start acting. Commander Okafor from the Jupiter stations is asking the same question. Hell, even the civilian colony ships are sending messages asking what we're waiting for. Sarah nodded. She had been feeling the same pressure building across human space. For 5 decades, humanity had played by the Council's rules, hoping that good behavior would eventually earn them respect and equal treatment. Instead, each year brought new restrictions, new humiliations, new reminders that humans were considered dangerous outsiders in their own galaxy. The breaking point had come 3 months ago when the Council had forcibly relocated a human research station that was studying ancient alien ruins. The researchers had been making breakthrough discoveries about faster-than-light technology that could revolutionize space travel. But the Council claimed the site was culturally sensitive and ordered humans to abandon their work immediately. Dr. Elizabeth Harper, the lead xenoarchaeologist, had spent 15 years excavating those ruins. When the Threnodi enforcement ships arrived to remove her team, she had transmitted her final message across human space. They will never let us grow. They will never let us explore. They will never treat us as equals. The only question is whether we accept this fate forever. That message had ignited something in humanity that 50 years of patient diplomacy couldn't extinguish. Across human space, from Earth's orbital platforms to the mining colonies in the asteroid belt, the same conversation was happening. How long would they wait for permission to live freely in their own galaxy? The Prometheus project is ready, Admiral Rodriguez continued, using the code name for their secret initiative. Captain Yankov confirms that the deep space construction sites are operational and fully supplied. Sarah felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with fear. The Prometheus project represented humanity's boldest gamble. While the Council believed humans were confined to the Sol system, secret construction teams had been building advanced bases in remote star systems for the past 3 years. These bases were equipped with manufacturing facilities, defensive systems, and most importantly, the new faster-than-light drive technology that Dr. Harper's team had developed before their forced evacuation. The technology was based on principles that no other galactic species had discovered. While alien civilizations relied on established hyperspace routes controlled by the Council, humans had learned to tear holes directly through space-time itself. It was dangerous, unpredictable, and absolutely revolutionary. Have our diplomatic contacts provided any intelligence on Council military positions? Sarah asked. Our friends in the Zephyrian underground report that the Council is completely unaware of our activities. They still believe we're confined to Sol system with primitive chemical rockets and basic fusion drives. Admiral Thekvar is convinced that humanity poses no serious threat to galactic stability. Sarah smiled grimly. Admiral Thekvar was the supreme military commander of the Council forces. A Threnodi, who had spent his entire career putting down rebellions and maintaining order. He saw humans as just another troublesome species that needed firm management. His contempt for human capabilities would be his downfall. There's something else, Rodriguez added, his expression growing serious. We've received covert communications from resistance groups across the galaxy. The Zephyrian scientific community is asking if the rumors about our new technology are true. The Corvin merchant guilds want to know if we're planning to challenge the trade monopolies. Even some of the younger Vale are questioning whether the Council's policies are sustainable. This was what the Council had always feared. Humanity's refusal to accept the established order was spreading to other species. The galaxy's younger generations were beginning to ask why they should accept a system that concentrated power in the hands of a few ancient species while keeping everyone else in carefully defined boxes. How many ships do we have ready for the operation? Sarah asked. 47 vessels equipped with the new drive systems. Not enough to match the Council's main fleets in open battle, but sufficient for what we're planning. The key will be striking multiple targets simultaneously before they can coordinate a response. Sarah walked to the forward observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Council was meeting in their ancient chambers, discussing how to maintain control over a galaxy that was slowly awakening to new possibilities. They had no idea that humanity had spent the last 3 years preparing for this moment. The plan was audacious in its scope. Instead of a single dramatic confrontation, humanity would execute coordinated strikes across multiple star systems simultaneously. While Council forces were scrambling to understand what was happening, human ships would establish permanent settlements in a dozen key systems, each one protected by defensive platforms that could be supplied indefinitely through their new faster-than-light network. But the real genius of the plan wasn't military. It was psychological. By demonstrating that humans could operate freely across the galaxy despite all restrictions, they would shatter the illusion of Council omnipotence. Every species that had dreamed of expansion beyond their assigned roles would see that the galaxy's established order wasn't unbreakable. Sarah, Admiral Rodriguez said quietly, once we do this, there's no going back. The Council will never negotiate with us again. This will be total war until one side breaks. The Galactic Council chambers had not seen such chaos in 3 centuries. Emergency alerts screamed from dozens of star systems as reports flooded in of human ships appearing where no human vessels should exist. Admiral Thekvar stood before the massive holographic display, his 4 massive arms gesturing wildly as he tried to process the impossible information streaming across the screens. Impossible, he rumbled in his deep Threnodi voice. The humans are confined to the Sol system. Our monitoring stations would have detected any ships leaving their space. Chancellor Vexnar of the Vale floated silently above the council floor, her ethereal form shimmering with barely controlled energy. As the oldest member of the council, she had overseen the establishment of humanity's restrictions 50 years ago. She had been certain that keeping humans locked in their home system would eventually teach them to accept their place in the galactic order. Perhaps, suggested Trade Coordinator Zilthak of the Corvin, his insectoid features clicking nervously. These reports are exaggerated. A few desperate human ships attempting futile exploration missions. The massive display updated with new information, and the chamber fell silent. 12 star systems now showed confirmed human presence, not single ships on desperate missions, but organized fleets establishing permanent installations with defensive platforms and supply networks. "How?" whispered science advisor Kelturin of the Zephyrians, her scaled features pale with shock. "Our intelligence indicated that human technology was decades behind galactic standards. Chemical propulsion, primitive fusion drives, basic manufacturing capabilities. Admiral Thekvar's tactical analysis systems were painting an increasingly disturbing picture. The human installations weren't random or desperate. They were strategically positioned to control major hyperspace routes, resource-rich systems, and communication nodes. Whoever had planned this operation understood galactic infrastructure better than most council members. "Sir," reported one of his subordinates, "the human ships are using an unknown faster-than-light technology. They're not following established hyperspace routes. Our sensors detect massive space-time distortions, but we cannot predict their movement patterns." Chancellor Vexnar descended toward the tactical display, her ancient mind racing through possibilities. In her 800-year lifespan, she had never encountered a species that developed space-folding technology independently. The hyperspace network had been discovered by the Vale millennia ago and carefully shared with other species to maintain control over galactic travel patterns. "Show me their installations," she commanded. The display shifted to show detailed scans of the human bases. What the council saw challenged everything they believed about human capabilities. These weren't desperate outposts thrown together by refugees. They were sophisticated orbital cities with manufacturing facilities, defensive systems, and infrastructure that suggested permanent occupation. Trade Coordinator. Zilthak's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation among his species. "The economic implications are catastrophic. If humans can travel freely between systems, they bypass all established trade regulations, the commercial networks we've maintained for centuries." "Forget trade networks," Admiral Thekvar interrupted. "Look at their military positioning. They've established bases that can threaten every major council stronghold. This isn't expansion, it's preparation for war." But Chancellor Vexnar was studying something else entirely. The human installations were broadcasting signals across the galaxy, not military communications or territorial claims, but something far more dangerous to the Council's authority. "They're transmitting their technology specifications," she said quietly, "to everyone." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices from dozens of species. For 50 years, the council had maintained control by carefully regulating which species had access to which technologies. The Zephyrians provided advanced computing, but were denied weapons technology. The Corvin controlled trade routes, but were forbidden from developing military ships. The system worked because no single species could challenge the established order alone. But humans were broadcasting the secrets of space-folding technology to every species in the galaxy simultaneously. Any civilization with basic manufacturing capabilities could build the drives within months. "This changes everything," science advisor Kelturin whispered. "If every species can travel freely..." Admiral Thekvar activated his combat systems, bringing up displays of council military assets. We must strike immediately before they can consolidate their positions. Full mobilization of all Threnody battle fleets. Wait, Chancellor Vexenar commanded, her voice carrying the authority of centuries. Consider what we face. These are not the desperate humans we've monitored for 50 years. This level of coordination and technological advancement suggests they've been planning this operation for years while we believed them helpless. On the tactical display, new alerts appeared as reports came in from across the galaxy. Zephyrian scientific stations were downloading human technical data. Corvin merchant guilds were demanding access to the new faster-than-light technology. Even younger Vale were questioning why the Council had hidden such possibilities from galactic civilization. The revolution the Council had always feared was beginning. Admiral Thekvar's subordinates reported massive fleet movements throughout Council space, but for every military asset moving toward human positions, 3 more were dealing with unrest among supposedly loyal species. The revelation that faster-than-light travel was possible without Council-controlled hyperspace routes had shattered assumptions across the galaxy. "Admiral," reported a communication specialist, "we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. She's requesting a formal audience with the Council." "Requesting?" Admiral Thekvar's voice carried dangerous undertones. "They establish illegal military bases across our galaxy and then request an audience?" But Chancellor Vexenar was intrigued. In 50 years of dealing with humans, they had always approached the Council with carefully respectful diplomatic protocols. A human commander requesting an audience while human fleets controlled a dozen star systems suggested a very different kind of conversation. "Put her through," the Chancellor commanded. The holographic display shifted to show the bridge of a human vessel. Commander Sarah Chen stood calmly before the communication array, her uniform bearing insignia that no Council intelligence service had ever catalogued. Behind her, the bridge hummed with activity as human officers coordinated operations across multiple star systems simultaneously. "Chancellor Vexenar, Admiral Thekvar, honored Council members," Sarah began, her voice carrying none of the deference that had characterized human diplomatic communications for decades. "I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. I speak for humanity and our allies in this matter." "Allies?" Trade Coordinator Zilthak clicked nervously. "The Zephyrian research councils who helped us develop our new technology in secret, the Corvin merchant houses who provided resources and intelligence, the younger generation of Vale who believe the galaxy deserves better leadership than a system designed to maintain the power of the few." Admiral Thekvar's tactical systems were already calculating response scenarios, but Chancellor Vexenar gestured for him to remain silent. This conversation would determine whether the galaxy faced a manageable rebellion or total revolutionary war. "You have violated every treaty and restriction placed upon your species," the Chancellor stated. "Your actions constitute an act of war against the established galactic order." Sarah's expression remained calm. "We have violated restrictions that were imposed without our consent and maintained through force. We never agreed to be prisoners in our own galaxy. Today, we simply stopped asking for permission to be free." "Your freedom threatens the stability that has maintained peace for centuries," Admiral Thekvar growled. "Peace for whom?" Sarah replied. "Peace for the Council members who control all resources, technology, and territory? What about the dozens of species confined to single systems like we were? What about the civilizations denied access to technologies that could improve their lives because it might disrupt the established order?" The chamber fell silent as Council members realized the true scope of what they faced. This wasn't just human rebellion. Sarah Chen was speaking for every species that had ever chafed under Council restrictions, every civilization that had dreamed of expansion beyond their assigned roles. "What do you want?" Chancellor Vexenar asked finally. Sarah's smile was neither hostile nor submissive. It was the expression of someone who held better cards than her opponents and knew it. "We want a new galactic order, one based on cooperation instead of control. one where every species has the right to explore, expand, and develop. According to the 6 months after the first human ships appeared beyond the Sol system, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Commander Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the new diplomatic station at Kepler 442, watching ships from 30 different species dock at the orbital complex that had become the unofficial capital of the Galactic Revolution. The old council chambers on the ancient world of Centralis had fallen silent 3 weeks ago when Chancellor Vexnar formally dissolved the Galactic Council. The system that had governed interstellar civilization for over a millennium had crumbled not through military conquest, but because most species had simply stopped recognizing its authority. Dr. Elizabeth Harper approached from behind, her footsteps echoing in the vast observation chamber. The Zephyrian delegation just confirmed that their science councils have voted to share their quantum computing technology freely with any species that wants it. The Corvin merchant houses are establishing open trade routes without council licensing requirements. Even the Threnody military is fracturing, with younger officers joining the new cooperative defense pacts. Sarah nodded, watching a massive Threnody dreadnought docking alongside sleek Zephyrian research vessels and human construction ships. 3 months ago, those species would never have cooperated outside of council-mandated protocols. Now they were working together to establish joint colonies and shared research facilities across dozens of star systems. "Any word from Admiral Thekvar?" Sarah asked. "He's still holed up in the fortress system with about 30% of the old council military," Harper replied, "but his own officers are deserting daily. Hard to maintain authority when your entire justification for power has evaporated." The transformation hadn't been without conflict. Several systems had erupted in violence as old hierarchies collapsed, and species that had been kept apart for centuries suddenly found themselves as neighbors. But the conflicts were local and brief, settled through negotiation rather than the massive military interventions that had characterized council peacekeeping. The secret to the revolution's success hadn't been human military superiority or technological advancement. It had been the simple recognition that the galaxy's species had more in common with each other than with the ancient powers that had controlled them. When humans had demonstrated that the established order could be challenged, long-suppressed desires for freedom and expansion had erupted across hundreds of worlds. "The morning reports," announced Communications Officer Martinez, approaching with a data tablet. "The Andorian Collective has completed construction of their first space-folding drive. The crystalline hives are requesting technical assistance for deep space exploration missions. The Aquatic Federation wants to establish joint research stations with our ocean world specialists." Sarah smiled. Every day brought news of species accomplishing things that the Council had told them were impossible. The Andorians had been restricted to their home system for 2 centuries, told that their aggressive nature made them unsuitable for galactic civilization. Now they were preparing to explore distant star systems alongside former Council species. "There's something else," Martinez continued. "We've received a formal communication from Chancellor Vexnar herself." Sarah's expression grew serious. The former chancellor had disappeared when the council dissolved, and intelligence reports suggested she had retreated to one of the ancient Veil sanctuary worlds. Her reappearance could signal anything from a surrender offer to preparation for a final counterattack. "Put her through on the main communication system," Sarah ordered. The observation deck's holographic projectors activated, revealing the ethereal form of Chancellor Vexnar. But something was different about her appearance. The aura of ancient authority that had always surrounded her had diminished, replaced by something Sarah hadn't expected to see: curiosity. "Commander Chen," the former chancellor began, her voice lacking its previous commanding tone, "I must congratulate you on your success. In 800 years of life, I have never witnessed such a complete transformation of galactic civilization." "Thank you," Sarah replied carefully. though I should note that this transformation belongs to all the species working together, not just humanity. Indeed, that is precisely what I wished to discuss. Vexanar's form shifted slightly, indicating deep thought among her species. I have spent the past months observing the changes across the galaxy. I expected chaos, warfare, the collapse of interstellar civilization. Instead, I have witnessed cooperation on a scale that the old council never achieved. Dr. Harper stepped forward. The difference is choice, Chancellor. When species cooperate because they want to, rather than because they're forced to, the results are quite different. Yes, I am beginning to understand this. Vexnar paused, her ethereal features showing something that might have been regret. The Veil created the council system because we believed that imposing order was necessary for galactic peace. We thought that allowing species to develop freely would lead to constant warfare. And instead, Sarah prompted, instead, we created a system where conflict was suppressed rather than resolved, where natural development was stunted rather than guided. We maintained peace through control, never realizing that we were preventing the very cooperation we claimed to protect. On the observation deck, representatives from multiple species were gathering to listen to the conversation. Word had spread quickly through the station that the former chancellor was communicating directly with the human leadership. "What will you and the remaining Veil do now?" Sarah asked. "That depends," Vexnar replied, "on whether there is a place for us in this new galactic order you are building." The question hung in the air. The Veil were the oldest and most knowledgeable species in the galaxy, with technologies and understanding accumulated over millennia. But they were also the architects of the system that had oppressed countless species for centuries. Dr. Harper spoke first. "The scientific knowledge your species possesses could benefit everyone. We've barely scratched the surface of what's possible when species share their discoveries freely. But," Sarah added firmly, "that would require accepting that no species, however ancient or advanced, has the right to control the development of others." "Understood," Vexnar acknowledged. "The age of the Veil as galactic guardians is over. But perhaps we could contribute as participants rather than rulers." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent alert from the station's sensor arrays. Martinez quickly consulted his displays before reporting with barely contained excitement. "Commander, we have confirmation of successful faster-than-light communication between the Kepler 442 system and the Andromeda Galaxy. The deep space exploration teams report contact with completely new forms of life." Sarah felt her breath catch. The space-folding technology that had liberated the galaxy from council control was now opening pathways to entirely new galaxies. The revolution that had begun with humanity's refusal to accept restrictions was expanding beyond their wildest dreams. "How many species are participating in the intergalactic exploration program?" she asked. 47 confirmed, with more joining daily. The crystalline hives are providing computational support, the Aquatic Federation is supplying biological expertise, and the Zephyrians are contributing their sensor technology. Even some of the younger Threnodi are requesting to join exploration missions. Vexnar's ethereal form brightened with something that might have been wonder. "Intergalactic exploration. We Veil spent millennia believing we had reached the limits of what was possible within our own galaxy. We never imagined. That's what happens when you stop telling species what they can't do and start working together on what they can do," Sarah replied. The former chancellor was silent for a long moment before responding. "Commander Chen, I formally request permission for the Veil to contribute our knowledge to these exploration efforts, not as leaders or guardians, but as participants in this new age of galactic cooperation." Sarah looked around the observation deck at the representatives from dozens of species who had gathered to witness this moment. 6 months ago, they had been subjects of the Galactic Council, confined to roles and territories assigned by ancient authorities. Now they were partners in an expanding network of cooperation that was reaching beyond their galaxy to explore entirely new frontiers. "Permission granted, Chancellor," Sarah said. "Welcome to the galaxy where no one waits for permission to dream big." As the communication ended and the various species representatives began discussing coordination for the intergalactic missions, Sarah realized that the human refusal to accept limitations had accomplished something unprecedented. Not just the liberation of their own species, but the liberation of an entire galaxy's potential. The moment humans stopped waiting had become the moment when galactic civilization stopped accepting artificial limits on what was possible. And as ships prepared to carry explorers from dozens of worlds to entirely new galaxies, Sarah understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy had learned that the only real limits were the ones imposed by those too afraid to imagine something better. And those days were over forever. Air capabilities rather than council permissions. "Impossible," Admiral Thekvar declared. "Such chaos would lead to war between every species." "Perhaps," Sarah acknowledged, "but that's a choice each species should make for themselves. The age of the Council making those decisions for everyone else is over." On the tactical displays around the chamber, new alerts continued to appear as the revolution spread across the galaxy. But Chancellor Vex Nar was beginning to understand that the military situation was secondary to the larger transformation taking place. The careful system of control that had maintained Council authority for centuries was crumbling not because of human military might, but because humans had offered the galaxy something better. The moment when humans stopped waiting had become the moment when the galaxy stopped accepting limits imposed by others. Sarah thought of Dr. Harper's final message, of 50 years of humiliation and restricted growth, of the countless human colonies that had been forbidden before they could even begin. She thought of the other species across the galaxy who lived under similar restrictions, dreaming of freedoms they were told they could never have. "Then we better make sure we don't break," she replied. "Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Prometheus begins in 72 hours. As the communication ended, Sarah remained on the observation deck, watching the stars that had been forbidden to her species for so long. In 3 days, humanity would either claim its place as an equal member of galactic civilization or face extinction for daring to challenge the established order. The moment when humans stopped waiting was finally at hand.